The Best of Our Knowledge explores topics on learning, education, and research. On today's episode, the James Webb Space Telescope has been sending detailed glimpses of the universe to Earth for a year now. We'll speak with a NASA scientist about the progress to date. And a bill in the New York State Legislature would require political campaigns to disclose when they use artificial intelligence. I'm Lucas Willard, host of The Best of Our Knowledge. You're listening to The Best of Our Knowledge. I'm your host, Lucas Willard. Launched in December 2021, the James Webb Space Telescope, NASA's largest and most powerful space telescope, has been transmitting images back to Earth for a year now. In that time, scientists say Webb has transformed our understanding of the cosmos. Celebrating Webb's first year in science, The Best of Our Knowledge's Jody Cowan spoke with NASA expert and astronomer Carl Gordon about the telescope's discoveries and a newly released image of a stellar nursery. Gordon began by speaking about Webb's mission to study the heavens.
It's to look very deep into the universe and see some of the earliest galaxies, also to look at planets around stars, to look at exoplanets and try to understand what kind of planets they are and what kind of atmospheres they have, and everything in between, from nearby galaxies to stars to interstellar matter, everything.
And today, to celebrate that one-year anniversary, NASA has released a new image from the heart of the Scorpius constellation here. Can you describe for our radio audience here what we're seeing in this image and maybe some of the science behind it?
Yeah, so this is a picture of a star-forming region that's about 400 light years away in Rho Ophiuchus. It's in Ophiuchus, actually. And what it shows us is both newly formed stars, similar to our own sun, about at least 50 of them. Also, jets coming out from these as they're getting out of their cocoons, as well as other stars lighting up the interstellar matter that they're being formed out of. It's quite pretty, I have to say, quite beautiful.
It is beautiful, and it's almost kind of chaotic and like hellish at the same time, as far as like what we're looking at and what we're seeing, and it's incredible.
Yes, it's quite a star formation is quite a impressive process. Can be quite a violent process as it clears out the material that it formed from, and then planets and so on. So yes, definitely.
I understand that the Webb telescope uses infrared to capture its images. In reality, is that what it really looks like?
I mean, it is what it looks like, but only if you had eyes that could see in the infrared or see heat, right? So infrared is what we feel is heat. We don't see it with our own eyes, but it is real. It's just that we basically shifted it to make it something we can see in the optical with our own eyes. So it's a standard process, completely real. So that's just how we see things, which are not things that we were evolved to actually see with our own eyes.
That's very cool. What kind of work gets done at the Space Telescope Science Institute, and what are you currently working on now?
Right. So at Space Telescope, we actually are the place where we run the telescope. So that's where commands are issued to go up to the telescope. We're also the interface to the science community worldwide. So we also figure out, along with our peers in the worldwide science community, what to use the telescope to do. We just finished figuring out what the next year's worth of observations will be. And so that's now all being scheduled and set up. And we work with the actual astronomers who put in for those. And so, and we also then take the data when it comes down, process it, and make it look nice, remove the instrumental signatures, i.e. reduce the data, and then make it look really nice and release it to the public.
And you particularly have an expertise in the study of dust and space dust.
Yeah, so I study the interstellar matter, both gas and dust, and mainly the interstellar dust. And this is solid particulate matter that's, I think of it as little tiny grains of soot and sand. And so I'm interested in trying to understand what kind of dust is out there. And James Webb is an awesome telescope to do that, because there's lots of signatures of the kinds of dust that are in this infrared wavelength range. And JWST is just such a powerful tool to study that.
How does Webb work with other telescopes to give us a more complete view of the universe?
Right. So Webb is working in the infrared, very complementary to, say, Hubble, which works in the optical and UV, as well as previous missions like Spitzer, which worked in a little further in the infrared. We have X-ray telescopes. There's radio telescopes on the ground. So we have a wide range where we try to look at all the different wavelengths, and that the different wavelengths tell us different things about what we're looking at, be they stars, galaxies, dust. So we learn something new with the different wavelengths. And I like to use pretty much whatever tool that can get me the answer, help me answer the science questions I'm interested in.
And what have been some of the favorite findings, or your particular favorite findings from the past year?
So I'm very excited about what we're beginning to learn from the spectroscopy side of all of these observatories, particularly Webb, right? So spectroscopy is, instead of images at a few wavelengths, we get many wavelengths. We get information from many wavelengths, and that really there's some fingerprints of, for example, what type of gas we see, what kind of atoms that are in the gas, or what kinds of dust. And so those fingerprints are really critical for us to understand not just what kind of gas and dust is there, say, in the interstellar medium, but also what their temperatures are, what their densities are, and all that helps us understand what's in this interstellar medium, but also then that's what goes into star formation. And so all that is part of the whole life cycle, in a sense, of stars and gas and dust.
How do we plan to use that information to better our lives here on Earth? Or is it less about betterment and just more about the gathering of this information?
At least from my point of view, I'm more about the gathering information and the understanding of our universe. And I think that does make a betterment, right? That's increasing the awesomeness, right? And to use that phrase from the past. It's just very interesting to know what it's all about. I don't work in the solar system, but coming closer to the solar system, Webb has done awesome things in the solar system, and that'll have more of an impact in a more future timescale when we start going more to the nearby planets.
Now, from my understanding, so the Webb telescope has this kind of fixed halo orbit in this position that it's in, but it's kind of in motion, and it's also capturing images of celestial objects and stellar objects that are also in motion. How do we get the clear, incredible images that we're getting compared to something like the Spitzer telescope, which I've noticed has more kind of a blurry image, initially?
So right, so it's not about the difference between Spitzer and Webb is just literally the size of the telescope. We have a much bigger telescope, so we have a much higher resolution images. That's the main difference. They both worked at the limits they could from optics. So Webb, right, everything's in motion. So Webb has higher resolution, so it had to do a better job keeping locked on to the objects we're looking at. And so there's actually a huge amount of engineering in order to lock on to those targets and then keep them there. And that's been a huge success of Webb. It's better even than we had planned. And so that's made it really, really awesome. One of the awesome things is the engineering has been incredibly spectacular on Webb.
It's awesome. And I've read about the planned 2026 launch of the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope. What's unique about this telescope, and how does it plan to be used?
So it's going to be a smaller telescope than Webb, the size of Hubble, but have a really wide field of view, so it can take big pictures of a large area on the sky. And so that's its job, and it's going to be really incredible in the kind of panoramas it can take and what that can do for our understanding of science, many targets, including nearby galaxies, which is one of the areas I'm interested in.
That's NASA astronomer Carl Gordon speaking with the best of our knowledge's Jody Cowan about the James Webb Space Telescope's first year of transmitting images back to Earth. You can view the images captured by Webb at nasa.webb.gov. This is the best of our knowledge. I'm Lucas Willard. The uses of artificial intelligence, seem almost limitless, but with AI finding more ways to make everyday tasks easier, there's also growing worry about misuse of the technology. In Washington, D.C., and in some states, conversations have begun about limiting the use of AI in government. In New York, one lawmaker is seeking to regulate the use of AI by political campaigns. Republican State Senator Jake Ashby told me about his legislation that would require campaigns prominently disclose when they're using AI to generate political content.
We've been hearing concerns for a number of years about election integrity on both sides of the aisle. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, you have concerns about what's going on. And I think this fits into that category. And I feel like this piece of legislation in particular can help us get a jump start on something that is growing rapidly in a variety of industries. And it's something that I feel like we're going to get good bipartisan support on. I've been having conversations with colleagues on both sides of the aisle, in both houses as well, and they've been supportive of it.
So state government is very complicated and it's very big. What's the scope of your legislation here?
So it's real simple. It would require a disclaimer on any political advertisement stating that AI was used to generate said advertisement.
Now, I say government because campaigns are one thing, but then there are reports, there's legislation. I mean, there's all kinds of documents that change hands and are vital to New York State government. So do you have any worries that we could be having potentially laws passed by AI technology?
Well, I think that's already happened as well, right? I think Assemblyman downstate Clyde Vannell had generated legislation used by AI, and Clyde's a good friend of mine. I like Clyde, and I think AI has a useful place in our culture and in our times, but I feel like there are parts of industries and in our culture where we need to be mindful of its negative impacts. And I feel like legislatively and obviously in campaigns, we need to be vigilant on that because we don't want to proliferate misinformation. We don't want to allow the opportunity for people to appear like they're supporting something that they don't, and for people to profit off of that as well. So I think it's important that we get the ball rolling here. This is certainly not a comprehensive bill, but I think it's an important step in addressing the issue.
There's a lot of misinformation already out there on social media without AI, and I don't think ChatGPT is fact-checking what it writes up. So, is this a primary concern of yours, is misinformation being shared out there?
Absolutely. And again, I think with the advent of AI stepping into this arena, we think that there's a lot of misinformation right now at the rate that it's growing and its ability to put information out there. We could see it grow even faster and to a volume that I think would be very, very detrimental.
I hadn't known until you just mentioned it that there was one of your legislative colleagues had used AI to write a piece of legislation. It almost seems like cheating on a book report. And I
won't tell Clyde you said that.
I know that lawmakers have, they have a lot of staff members who help them draft language and everything else like that. But, did you have have a conversation with them after that and say, what were you thinking?
No, I think Assemblyman Vannell always has a tech slant. I think he likes to be in that legislative vein, and I respect him for that. And the legislation that he wrote, I think, is a very simple piece of legislation. It wasn't, or that he wrote, excuse me, that AI wrote, and that he's sponsoring. But again, I think that's another indication of why this is important. Why this bill and why this topic is something that needs to be in the forefront of every legislator at the state and federal level.
Going back to just campaigns and social media, now AI being worked into that, there's a lot of conversations that happen usually in an election year about media literacy, and with younger people coming up with newer forms of technology, maybe they're not used to picking up a piece of newsprint and reading a story in a newspaper, or older individuals who are not as familiar with social media and they kind of believe everything that they see online. So with this, do you think that there needs to be a focus on media literacy too, and getting people really up to speed and how to be aware of AI and where it may turn up, and realizing that what they may be reading may have been generated by a piece of software?
Well, this is where I think this legislation could be helpful, because if there's a disclaimer there, and it won't be, font size 5, right? It'll be something legible that people can read, and it'll make them aware. And I think that may have a triggering effect for people to, it would suggest that perhaps what I'm seeing here isn't, it may not be completely true. It may, and having that in the back of their mind too, may be a good thing when they're reading things, to question, the validity, the reliability, and that sort of thing, and not taking it as 100% infallible truth. I think that's important for everybody. It's always have that consideration in mind.
Jake Ashby, a Republican, is the state senator for New York's 43rd District. Similar legislation to regulate AI-generated content in political ads has been introduced in the U.S. Senate by Democrat Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. You're listening to The Best of Our Knowledge. About a year ago, the public library in Springfield, Massachusetts, solicited donations of yearbooks from the city's high schools for a project to digitize these often requested items. The response was tremendous, according to the Springfield City Library. Recently, the collection, which is still building, was made available for free online viewing. The Best of Our Knowledge's Paul Tuthill spoke with Elizabeth McKinstry, the librarian in charge of the project, to learn more.
We asked folks in Springfield if they would donate yearbooks to us, because we had a really small collection, spotty collection, not very many, but people came in all the time and asked us for them. So we put out the call, and holy moly, I don't want to get too emotional, but I just have to tell you, so many people brought yearbooks to us. We had over 400 yearbooks donated to us, about 250 unique years, because we did get some duplicates. And once we got the collection in, I drove it in my little car all the way to Boston, and we had the folks at Digital Commonwealth digitize them. And we just announced that the digitized versions are online, so anyone from anywhere can look at them from their phone or their computer and see what we have online, flip through it online just like it was really in front of them.
And what's the address for people to look that up?
Sure. So if you go to our website, which is springfieldlibrary.org, you can go ahead and put in the search box yearbooks, and it would take you right to the page with the yearbooks.
And these are complete yearbooks, right? Pictures, people have
They
signed
are,
them, everything,
right?
It's
not just the text, it's everything. So if someone donated us with someone writing in it, it has that. Or if it's a clean version, it's the clean version. But yeah, it's just like having it right in front of you. It's fully digitized in color, so you can flip through and see all the pictures and all those memories from school.
Were there any unique finds that you came across in this project in terms of yearbooks that were donated?
We definitely saw some amazing yearbook covers. I would say particularly in the 60s and 70s, there were some super funky designs that were really fun to see. I think some of the other unique things is that in addition to yearbooks, some people brought us extras. So people brought us Letterman patches and high school graduation programs, and some people brought us stacks of senior photos. And in fact, we have all that on display in the glass cases on the first floor here at 220 State Street, so people can see all the cool items that were donated along with the yearbooks.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. There is a physical display that's a companion to this online project.
Yeah, exactly. My colleague Maggie, and she put together this amazing display with some of the cool covers and, like I said, all of the associated information. We still need to pick up some of the physical yearbooks that are still in Boston because they just got finished being scanned, and so I got to go drive into Boston and get those and bring them back to the library. So we don't have all the physical items back in-house yet in terms of yearbooks, but everything that we had is digitized and online, so anyone can see it from anywhere.
Now you're still looking for yearbooks, right? I mean, this isn't a complete collection of all the yearbooks ever issued in Springfield history, right?
You are so right. That is exactly correct. Although we have an amazing start to the collection and we totally appreciate everyone. I will say, particularly we're missing most of the later years. So we are absolutely still accepting donations. Yearbooks can be dropped off at any of our 9 locations during open hours, and they know how to get those to me. And then we would add them to our collection, and then next time we do another digitization batch, they would be put online. But if you go to our website, you can see all the ones we have, and if it's not on there, we don't have it, and we definitely still need it. So we definitely appreciate folks continuing to donate yearbooks to the project because everyone gets to see them. When you donate a yearbook to us, you're donating to preserving the history of Springfield, and that's a real valuable thing. That's how we all come together as a community.
When we first discussed this project, you told me that the yearbooks were one of the most requested items in a library, and I actually found that a little bit surprising, but I guess it's not.
Well, I think what we talked about is that, like, for local history stuff, it's definitely the second biggest request that we get. So the first one is people come in looking for copies of obituaries. And the second thing was people coming to look at yearbooks. A lot of times folks wanted to come in and look at a picture of a parent or an aunt and uncle or a grandma or grandpa kind of thing, like really trying to get pictures for family histories or family memorials or trying to see, sports achievements, things like that. And we just weren't able to provide it. So this is really, really exciting for us because not only do people in Springfield ask us, but people from all over the world. We had a request recently from a man in France looking for information on his mother's 1931 high school yearbook. And when we sent him, he was able to share it with all his siblings. I mean, he never could have come here and asked us for that. So yeah, I think it's a huge value to the community. And like I said, particularly for people who maybe don't live around here anymore, and now they can see them online, which is great.
Elizabeth McKinstry of the Springfield City Library, speaking with the best of our knowledge's Paul Tuthill. After 3 years of work and controversy, officials in Vermont recently marked the launch of the new Vermont State University system. The new system unifies 3 colleges in the Green Mountain State, as the best of our knowledge's Pat Bradley reports.
In 2020, the Vermont State Colleges faced a fiscal crisis, and the then chancellor proposed closing 3 campuses. Significant backlash to the idea, current Vermont State College Chancellor Sophie Zadatny explains, led to recommendations from a committee commissioned by the state legislature.
The 2 big proposals that came out of it were bringing together 3 of the 4 institutions within our system to create 1 new university, and then to engage in significant administrative consolidation. In exchange, the Select Committee made proposals regarding state funding for a multi-year transformation.
The 3 colleges of the Vermont State University are Castleton and Northern Vermont Universities and the Vermont Technical College. Interim President Michael Smith says the transformation has been done for 3 reasons.
Number one, it's good for the students, the flexibility of what we can offer as a university throughout our various campuses. Secondly, it's good for the institution, not competing against one another, but instead working and rowing in the same direction. And it also saves us overhead money with consolidation as we move forward. But also, it's really good for the state of Vermont as well, in that it better helps us coordinate the needs of the workforce out there throughout all our campuses.
The system is paying off a $25 million structural deficit, and Smith acknowledges that is a factor in the consolidation.
The state has been very generous to Vermont State University to the tune of about $200 million since 2020 to make sure that this transformation happens in an effective way. And they've helped us out with those deficits. We've been reducing it $5 million a year so far, and we will continue to do it for the next 4 years so that we are out of this deficit situation. The combination of efficiencies that we're going to glean off of this transformation, plus the investment that the state has made to help us, I think will prove successful as we move forward.
Smith was brought in as interim president of the system after Parwinder Graywall resigned following a controversial proposal to revamp the library system and sports programs. Smith feels the decisions should not have been made without more input from those working in the field.
Progressive library practices basically say you should be moving to some form of digital capability within your libraries, and that's what we're moving forward in doing. The difference is that I'm not saying we got to be 100% digital. What the percentage is up to the people that work in those professions on a day-to-day basis, not me dictating it from top down. And we will get to a place where I think everybody will agree that we'll have some form of digital access in our libraries. On the sports side, I just really felt we didn't have enough information. And plus, we didn't give our athletic directors enough time to be evaluated against specific criteria.
Zadatny notes that the creation of the Vermont State University does not eliminate the Vermont State College's system.
The system as a whole, the Vermont State College system, is still up and running. That hasn't changed. It's just that the three of the four institutions have come together to form this new state university. So the Vermont State College system, we have one board of trustees and one chancellor. We oversee the Community College of Vermont and Vermont State University.
Reporting for The Best of Our Knowledge, I'm Pat Bradley.
This has been The Best of Our Knowledge, episode 1714. The Best of Our Knowledge is a national production of WAMC, Northeast Public Radio. Thanks to associate producer Jody Cowan. The latest on all National Productions programs is available via the Airwaves newsletter and our flagship station's website, wamc.org. Until next time, I'm Lucas Willard.